give some time for someone to join. You have the share screen for this.
Yeah, I'm retrieving the chat. Okay. Well, is other skills re-enabled for the competition one? Or not yet?
I haven't responded. We can still we can update them. I'll I can set them. Stop. Okay. We might make a start, and people can always watch the recording filter in. Thank you for joining. You can all hear. Everyone can hear. Yeah. Today's session, thanks for bearing with us over the last couple of weeks and with the no session last week, but today's session should be relatively short, succinct, but effective and useful is our goal. Also, as always, this is a forum. So if anyone has any complaints, queries, anything that you're finding, anything you didn't want to post in the AI chat, now's a good time to bring it up. The main focus of today will be the skills function that we've alluded to before. Presently, this is available to all people outside of competition, although we are hoping that changes quite soon, and that all people in competition will be able to use the skills. So that is the main focus of today. Alberto, for example, has already started creating skills. We've been working on a Fidelify skill ourselves. These are things that you can build with Claude's Assistant relatively easily and quickly, and then share across the organization. So we really want people to think about how they might be able to take a task they do repeatedly and turn it into something consistent and automated. Over to you.
Yeah. So, on my screen. So skills in general are saved snippets of instructions for Claude to follow, which can contain assets. So whatever it needs to accomplish the task. So what you might have found is that you might have a repetitive task you want to do, something where you will spell out the instruction, ask it to do it, you've gotten a good result, and then let's say a week later you want to ask it to redo the same thing again. Either you just go back through this interaction, the back and forth to get back the same result, which is going to be annoying for you because you're going to have to repeat yourself and maybe you're going to get a slightly different result. It's not very reproducible for other people. Or something else that you could try is just continuing the same conversation, at which point you start having more and more expensive token-wise calls because the context just grows, and at some point the quality degrades. So the idea of the skills is just that at some point when you've gotten a good result, a good workflow that works for you and you want to be able to save it, you can just ask Claude to be able to save it into a skill, which is something that you can just call up and share with other people. So here's one small example. It's something that we have to do so often in FinSec, is that our class certifications, etc., follow very standard procedures. And you've got this class case management filings on code listeners that just spell out with a code, like we're going to have class certification at this stage, expert report at this stage, merits report then, etc., for both sides. And effectively, I don't want the whole host of information that's on there because it's a lot and I'm not a lawyer. What I want really is a few specific dates formatted in a format which allow me to set my deadlines and understand what's the schedule ahead for a case I'm working on. And the process I went through is very simple. I used this connector to Court Listener. So I was able to tell Claude, okay, look for this case ST micro, what are the schedules, see where the information is. So it first familiarized itself with the platform. Okay, I was misconnected to the tool. It did a bit of research. It found the case. It read the relevant docket entries. It found a bunch of the dates. And then there was a back and forth where it was like, okay, actually the dates I want, how to follow these things, are the specific ones, etc. I would like it presented this way because this is the way that makes sense for me. And after a bit of this back and forth, I asked it if it could produce a skill that I could reuse to avoid having to reprompt this thing and just get my one output in a table. And it's as simple as just asking Claude to do it or writing in the chat skill creator or just skill, and it pops up and Claude tells you that this is something you can write to tell it that you want to create a skill, or if you just in prose say it, it's going to do it. At which point it will, by itself, write up the instruction it had to follow to get to the output that you wanted and give you something that you can readily just save to install in your Claude instance and afterward being able to share. So here, for example, the output is going to be a standard table always formatted in the same way with the same pieces of information, which are the one I am interested in, and I want to be able to ask Claude to reproduce. And these are very flexible. They're really just bounded by what you can imagine to be constructing. You can check what skills you have or manage them by going into the little plus button here, going into manage skills, or equivalently, you can just go here on customize, and you can see all of the skills. You got your personal ones and you got the shared ones, which, for example, this is the one that Alberto was talking about yesterday on the chat. And in general, a skill is really just a little zip file, which is going to contain some general instruction, some triggers. So it can be that it triggers only when you do an explicit call. So you do the / command with the skill name, or it can be an auto trigger. So Claude is going to be aware that this thing is floating in the net of the thing. It can go open and read. It's as if you had a book on your table, and Claude knows, oh, yeah, he's talking about something on Court Listener or Court scheduling. So I'm just going to open up that book, look at the instructions. So I'm just going to check that thing instead of having to guess back at the start. And it's very easy to share them. And you can turn them on and off. If, for example, you don't want Claude to just target itself towards something. This skill is extremely bare-bone because it's just a set of instructions. If we look at the skill that Alberto sent, the feeder's chart one, you see here you've got a slightly more feature-rich ribbon. And you see this is the skill MD. So this is the main instruction set that Claude sees, which is just the general, what you should be doing. You see it encodes the colors, etc. And it has also a guide to files. And what happens is that the skill can package not only the general instruction, textual format, but you can package assets. So you can put in that zip file alongside the .md, you can put basically whatever you want. So you can put standard scripts. You can put Word document, PowerPoints, Excels, fonts, for example. So in the feeder's chart skill that Alberto created, we have in the assets, there's a folder with our fonts, Proxima Nova. So Claude will have them and will be able to call up on those assets. And use them whenever it's called. You can package, for example, a specific template. You can package specific instruction for how to use Gamma, for example, or further more detailed .md files. For example, you could have a general skill instruction that will point Claude towards, oh, if you're running class-wide damages in Europe, here's a sub-skill that you can go read that will specify which damage model to use. So you can have one general skill that does internal routing, and Claude will just go and read the necessary files, which is quite practical to build, feature-rich setup. And here you can see there's also a .py script that is inside, but you can just go and have a look. Everything is transparent. You can edit these things, share back with each other. You can, just ask Claude to edit it. It's right here, edit with Claude. And if you have been given this skill by somebody else, but there's something that you want to change, you don't have to start back from scratch. You can just drop, for example, assets in the chat and ask Claude to add them to it and save it on your local workspace, and you get the benefit of these personalized skills that people have shared with you. So it's something which, as a goal, is to help yourself get rid of boilerplate, make things reproducible, makes workflows shareable, and it's for you to find what are the pain points, the little things where you feel like, oh, I just keep having to explain to it, do this and that and that and that. And anytime you find yourself doing this, just maybe try finishing the conversation, being like, oh, okay, let's create a skill for this, and try to explore these things to also be able to share these methodologies together.
Are skills that are shared with the organization, do they follow like a pull request style thing? Can anyone just automatically say share this skill?
Right now, it's the organizational owner that can take a skill and decree that it's organizationally shared. So at this stage, it's something that we have to ask Rory or Andrew to do if we have a skill that we want to share to everyone. We started with William working on a general Federest Claude general GitHub repo, where we're storing the skills we're working on for the Federify skill. And where we're thinking, okay, if there's a skill you worked on and you're finding it's nice, or you want to iterate and have it saved in a setting that is, a bit formal with version control, etc., you can just add it to that repo, and we can have it as a general company-wide scratch pad where you can just throw something in there, no real strong barriers. Just if there's something you find useful, throw it in there. We can iterate. People give feedback. And if something is good enough that it should be shared company-wide, then we bring it up to IT, and that's something that basically gets deployed.
Are skills like a zip file, you said?
So yeah, when you share it, you can. It's basically a zip file which has a
can't really get it. It can't really get it because it's a binary file. Is that
no, I mean when you
get content?
Yeah, you get the content of a zip file, and so you have one folder per skill, and when you want to install it, you just drag the .zip version of it.
And the most basic skills are just a markdown file.
Yeah.
But if you're also giving it assets and other things and Python scripts and things to execute. And at this point in time, when we say it's Velodio could see Alberto's that Alberto had shared across the org, that's noting that was the non-competition org. We are operating in this world of two organizations. So anything shared will stay in the org that you're allocated to, although if we have something that we want to distribute company-wide, that's easy because you can just distribute the zip file, and there's other methods of distribution. So it's all possible. But if anybody doesn't see Alberto's and wonders why, that's because you're probably in competition.
And again, we're sorry, it's a bit complicated. It's a bit of friction. It's there for a good reason. And thanks a lot for bearing with us as we get everything working how everybody wants it to be working, basically, which is, the least amount of friction, but the maximum amount of security.
So you mentioned that the skills are not available for competition team at the moment.
Yeah, so because the way these skills appear for Claude, it sees like an inner directory in which it sees a bunch of folders.
Yeah.
And we'll see folders for each of those skills. And for it to be able to navigate into these folders and create new files, etc., it needs to have one setting enabled, which is this code execution setting.
Got it.
And there's a side effect to this related to being able to launch Claude Code in some settings, not in the app, but in the IDE. And so we need to patch that up before being able to.
Do you need Claude Code for skills?
No,
No,
it's a side effect. It's their control being a bit annoying, basically. It's like if we turn on that thing, which it turns off on something else, we need to block over there.
essentially, when you run a skill, Claude is executing code in its own heavily sandboxed environment.
Yeah.
It's not allowing you to operate with Claude
Oh,
code
it's
locally.
agentic and so on.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that allows it allows it to create an Excel file or a PowerPoint or any other output. It's this Claude code. So we're working through that.
And so here, for example, it's one of the draft of a general Feederify skill we're working on. And it's a lot heavier because it has, subdirectories with our templates, all of our Excel, PowerPoint templates, etc. And the goal is that, okay, if Claude can navigate from there, okay, I want to create a template, create a new document, I can go into the template, look into the PowerPoint, if it's a PowerPoint, and fetch the right file. And because of the folder structure, it doesn't have to get everything into context. It just runs internally a command to fetch that file from the skill folder and populate the conversation with it. And then your general instruction, like for example, the FeederS logo, etc., you can package them into the skills. So it's very wide what you can put into it.
And to be very transparent about the Feederify skill, we've been having our own debates about whether it should be right from the start as an auto-triggered in the generative stage or more in the post-processing. Like I've created this HTML, I've created this Excel using Claude, I'm happy with the content, but now I want to click a button, type /Feederify and have it in the same way that in our Excel with our add-in, you hit the Feederify button, more as a post-processing step. So, I'm always open to ideas on that as well, but there's pros and cons to both approaches. But if it was a post-processing, again, it would know, okay, this is an Excel file. So then it could run, as Valeria has said, these if statements of like, okay, I recognize it's an Excel, so I'm going to go to the Excel folder and we're going to build it out with the Excel template and the Excel specific instructions that were provided. So, and another debate would be to split these up as different skills as well. Maybe you want to Feederify Excel, but for now, we've put it all under the one umbrella.
Yeah, go ahead, Andres.
Should we be using like the Feederify skill or like Claude design with the Feederis design system? And, like,
so yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, in terms of cheaper to use, I actually don't know how the token consumption differ. So in Claude design, I've shown this, you've got this design system, which is just like general settings for like colors, etc., heading styles, which is really just a CSS sheet, effectively. And there's one that you can use, which is this Feederis design system that Will made. We will double check that it's available, the same one on the competition. Just after. Please stay tuned for that. We'll just confirm, which has all of the colors, etc. So right now, if you create something with,
it's also more, it's more than colors as well. Like,
it has the colors and a lot of other things for like components. The how to put the dividers.
Yeah, I've used this like where I put something in HTML and then I put it into this.
But if you if you produce a small dashboard as part of a long discussion, you will get something with these Feederify skills that will match the general design language that we want at Feederis. But if you just from the get-go know you want to produce something which is this graphical output a la Gamma or Figma, you're going to go more towards cloud design, and there you have this, design system which is already given there that we'll build.
And it's sort of two ways. We're learning as well, two ways to achieve a similar outcome. So we want to sort of just provide a skill so that if you're operating in chat and you don't want to move to Claude Design, that also works. One limitation of Claude Design is that these templates, you can see next to design system, seem to be the Claude templates, and I haven't seen a way to upload your own. You can always obviously upload as an attachment our US letter, document template alongside whatever you're working on, and then that combined with the design system would give you something that fulfills our brief. But the skill we're trying to build would have that already built in, so you wouldn't have to be uploading any specific templates.
And there's also a question of like, it's not clear what is best, and it's not necessarily a sense in which like one is just, there's nothing dogmatic here. It's not like you have to do this in this situation, etc. It's, these systems are very fickle in a sense because, depends a bit on how you're speaking to it, what's the actual latest model or changes they did under the scene, etc. So, what matters is really that you're using it in the way where you get the results you're the most happiest with. And if people, for some reason, go like, anytime I want to use Cloud Design, I don't understand how to use it, there's no sense in, being like, if you want to produce a slide deck, you have to use Cloud Design. Like, there's no sense in us being like forcing you to do this. It's a very flexible infrastructure, and we want for you to be able to use it whichever way you want. Which is why we're showing like a lot of different tools in these sessions. But you've got this overarching general themes of, okay, once you're happy with the result, being able to save it and reproduce it, which are the skills, and being able to connect to external services with the connectors or MCP servers, and being able to, join all of these things together. All of this cross each other, because, for example, this skill I showed you I built was telling Claude to use the court listener connector to go and check for the right filing. So it leverages a specific connector. So it knows in that context that it should have access to this one. It will look for it. If I don't have it, it's going to tell me I cannot use that skill. I don't have what I need. So, you can, that's how you build something that is powerful and helping you your workflow.
Does anyone on the call like recognize things that they do quite regularly? Maybe it's editing documents in a particular way. Any websites they visit consistently that might benefit from a skill?
Yeah, I often will ask, like, especially when I'm sort of finishing something up, like, I want these specific checks for an expert report, like, looking for particular typos or duplicated words or, things that the spell checker is not going to check. But then also things like, make sure, there's no legal things that sound like legal opinions without, saying I understand first, things of that nature. So I think a skill could be useful for that. My question also is like, is there any difference really between using like the Word plugin versus like uploading a document through chat? Like, is there something that's sort of most efficient to do, or it doesn't really matter and whatever is sort of most convenient works?
It's partly most convenient for you. The way it's helpful to think about how it's going to be interacting with the object you want it to interact with. So, for example, if you're like processing multiple documents, etc., it's more helpful to be working in the chat where you can, like, for example, if you have a complaint and other things, etc., and you want it all summarized, or get a small summary, or tables, a sheet of instruction information, check if you're matching something in your draft. I find it's a bit easier to drop everything in the chat, because that's handling multiple files, so it can organize it in a folder. While if you work with a Word connector, so I'm just going to put up this is not secret, by the way. It's an empty draft that I started 2 days ago, so there's nothing. It's just a template. Here, for example, if you go here and you use the Word template, sorry. haven't used it in a week. So it logs me in. But what it's going to do in the later. So what it's going to do in the chat is, run a bunch of commands on its inner workspace, which is in a sandbox, to edit those files. When you're directly in the Word connector, it has access to a specific library, which gives it API endpoint to the Word editor that you're using. So the way in which it's able to interact with a Word document, it's a bit different. And here, for example, yes, it's a bit more limited and targeted, and it has a harness around it. So the model is not just, a newborn. It has some pre-information before you first type, but informs it of what tools it has available. And it has a few Word-specific tools to interact with this document, but will make it maybe a bit less quirky on like editing Word documents, etc. So it's a bit about context management, etc. for these things. One thing is that, for example, you see you've got these built-in skills, which actually do not exist in the main Claude chat interface. So it's because you're in Word, but these skills are available. And if you define a skill in the main Claude document, you could call those skills from here. So if you have a very standard task you're doing in Word, you could summarize them in this conversation, create a skill for it, and have it run through these steps. And you see, for example, there's this compare version, which, for example, could give you a quick summary of what has changed since the last version by only looking through the track changes. And it's not something that you have by default on the main chat. It's something that's given to it by the specific harness of being spun up in Word. Does that make sense? And you see my code listener scheduling one appears here as well. So you've got this interaction between them.
Yeah, no, this is helpful. I mean, is there any reason really to use a compare version though? Because like Word can already do that. So like, what's the advantage of using Claude?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, there's a question of like some of these features can be a bit gimmicky. Some would be helpful. It's something of, being aware of a solution like this thing is there and being able to, see what it's good for. It's not good for everything it's trying to do. And, and we've had this specific case, Connor, right? Of so we had Hongja using Claude Code for like proofreading a document we had all gone over, and it found very small clauses that were a bit repetitive that just were passing through our eyes by the end of reviewing and reading the document 50 times, and it doesn't get tired, for example, so it's helpful for general proofreading.
I found that to be incredibly helpful, actually. So
yeah. Or I mean, we've had this thing, right, of if, for example, American versus English citation system where the punctuation goes inside or outside of a quotation mark. I don't know for anybody else, but my eyes just burn after reading 5 of these, and I just cannot see anything.
It's a huge pet peeve of mine.
It's hard, but it's maybe it ought to be good for this. Is it the best solution? Not necessarily. Is it a working solution? Maybe. Is it worth trying? I think so. Yeah.
Thanks for the help.
Cool. But the Office suite specifically is like the harness it has around makes it interact a bit differently, which is part of what makes it special.
The skills bit, is that useful for like standardizing certain practices across? I understand the I don't know, the formatting is one thing, but like I don't know, QC checks, because you've got this IDE Claude code.
So it's
so like certain rules that you generally have to follow on in terms of like when you write stuff in, or when
Oh yeah. So these skills, they port like directly to when you work on the IDE in Cloud Code, like the same ones. And you can have Cloud Code specific skills, which are actually more advanced because they can embed like, more payloads and coding and execute them more efficiently. And yeah, so for example, so you've got some which are built in that Anthropic did. There's like one that's called /code review, and you've got some which are focused on security audits of open infrastructure. Like, do you have any library that's compromised, stuff like that. You've got general deprecation checks, like, are you using this repository any library that's outdated? Which is something that can be annoying because, sometimes you've just been using that same library for 10 years and you just, if you don't look through the CRAN update, you don't realize that one geospatial library you're using for your datasets is just not maintained since 2018. And, that's actually a problem. And, you can automatize this type of QC and formalize them very easily, or, just having Claude like read through a code base and flag, any file that's above 500 lines and any file which do not have clear docstring for comments, which is like actually one I use for myself because I like to keep my files under a certain amount of lines because otherwise I just can never remember what they do. So yeah, those are, like, as soon as you have like this repetitive task, you can really like formalize them and be like, okay, hand off. So it's pretty similar to how you would, take somebody that's just getting onboarded onto the task. You'd be giving them a few instructions that they would jot down on a piece of paper and then try to follow them best they could. It's basically what this is doing.
Got it.
And yeah, and they can be for checks or, actual generation. So for example, if you have a very specific, language for how you write some types of functions, you can, specify it all in the skills for, how it should generate like, a general like producing R snippet code. If there's any idiosyncrasies in how we use the R language, which is something that you find yourself correcting Claude, because anytime you ask it to do something about, manipulating data frames in R, it just goes with dplyr because it tends to be the default it uses in R for some reason. If you're just finding yourself being completely fed up, being like, no, use data table in my example code, please, just put it in your general skills like R programming, or put it in your general, memory, and it will just stop doing the thing. You won't have to tell it again because it will effectively just read that instruction first. And that goes for data table, but also for, okay, present me outputs of your estimates using great tables. So I've got like a nice output in the chat. Can do that. Just have to, ask it to and save it down, basically.
If there's no other sort of ideas or questions people have on skills in particular, I might ask a general question as to whether people feel like their Claude use is evolving. Are you still using it for very similar things that you were using it for on day one as a glorified Google search? I know Claude Code has been on and off, so that's kind of tricky part there. But are you feeling like you've got the resources to evolve with it, or you're still not quite sure how to do things and what's out there, or feedback like that is useful?
Are you getting value out of it, basically?
I definitely am. Please don't turn it off.
Well,
100%.
okay.
This is how much we're trying to extract, like.
Yeah. Yeah, Tanya? Were you just confirming?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm using it way more, and I'm learning like the skills and the connectors that I wouldn't have used before. So definitely getting value.
Yeah.
Do you feel you're like well equipped to just learn and build that out on your own, or Just employing
even after these meetings, often it just means trying it out myself and maybe asking again. But yeah, I'm learning and just reaching out for help and assistance. You know, even when someone sends a skill, I was a bit like, oh, how do I actually use this? How do I invoke it and things like that? But you know, just through practicing, getting the hang of it. But yeah, definitely, I was starting from quite a low knowledge base, and yeah, and trying out the connectors and skills and just learning what these things are. So thank you.
I'm with Tanya, learning a little bit more every day and exploring as well.
How about the memory limits? Have people sort of found they've been able to keep them under control if you're taking active steps to not hit them?
Yeah,
Play
yeah,
around with Fable too much.
yeah. I had I reached a limit this week, but it was the company limit, I think, wasn't it, Rory? Was not my usage, was the credits that we reached the limit, but I think as a company.
So every user has a $10 default excess.
And I
So-
used it.
Yeah, basically. But we, across the board, we're learning and we're understanding what usage patterns look like, and we've set that just so the costs don't run away with extra usage. But if you do hit this and can't use it, just reach out, or I think what you did, Fernando, was request some extra
It
usage.
was. Yeah, it
Because
was.
the next day your allowance was reset.
Exactly.
That was that. Yeah. So, but yeah, kind of like everything, just reach out. You shouldn't really be blocked from usage. So if you are, you can just get in touch with any of us and we'll
I think that was the first time, to be honest, that really I was blocked. The other times was I reached the daily limit, but now I work in a different way. So the last few weeks I haven't reached the limit, so all good.
Yeah, like I think it's a pattern like I've seen play out a lot. It's like you at some point your usage kick in and you keep hitting the limit all the time. And after a week or two, it just like doesn't happen anymore somehow.
For some reason, yeah.
Which is, it's just getting used to a tool. I feel like it's a like natural pacing thing.
I think so.
Yeah. Cool.
Last, is there anything that anybody would really like to see in these Thursday AI as well? Like we also want to start steering it not just away from Claude as well. Like there's lots of AI tools out there. We also want to see and hear from some of you about what you're building and how you're using it as well. But if there's any glaring like, oh, I heard about this really cool AI tool, or my friends at another company are using X, do let us know either now or
Yeah, just send messages.
Do we have any progress on like a MD thing?
What?
Oh, what? Sorry.
Like a PDF to .md. Like,
Yeah, so there's something working. There's a question of how you get everybody to like get it installed on everybody's computer, especially for like non-technical stuff. But I can, like, if you have UV installed and you know how to use Python, I can just like literally point you to the code and you can install it on yours. It just
for the wider context.
Yeah. Yeah, PDF to Markdown ingested.
For the wider context here is we, as we've mentioned on a few of these calls, PDFs take up a lot of your memory. It's quite expensive for Claude to process them, particularly if you're working with some 100-page Italian decision. And so we've been working mostly with Valeria on a tool that would try and convert it to Markdown as a kind of text-based file before that processing step. And we want to be able to allow this in the chat so that when you upload a big PDF, you can trigger this and it won't hit your memory limit as quickly.
Yeah.
And that's been built, but we're just considering the best way to deploy it, hopefully very soon.
So yeah, in case like nobody has ever opened the PDF file as a text file, this is what Claude sees. It's a very, very big mess of junk and symbols, but the PDF reader on our side restructures into something clean like this. But it's like from a textual perspective, which is what it sees first before preprocessing, it is just a lot of junk symbols.
And
instead
so,
of just being the text here, which is what we would like you to be able to send directly.
And so Velodia's testing has shown, for example, potentially a 60% improvement in token and memory use. Fernando?
Yeah, we should create a skill which executes the code to run the parser.
Yeah, no. So there's a very small thing, because like you don't want people to drop the PDF in the chat, because otherwise it consumes all these tokens. You want Claude to be able to go fetch the PDF on your drive and get the markdown in. Anyway, but technical junk. Yes, Fernanda?
So I am working with Alberto on creating a skill for agreements, contracts.
Yeah.
And we were speaking about connecting it with DocuSign, but is there something there that we could imagine that I use that skill for an agreement with a client, or imagine a contract with a new employee? I fill the gaps as per the prompts that Claude will give me, and then is there a way that I will send it for approval, imagine to Russell or Alberto, and they add their signature?
So I just checked, there's a DocuSign MCP server.
So connector, basically.
So the answer is we'll have to look into the specific use case. But it looks promising, because one of the...
Because that could speed up a lot drafting LOE, NDA, an employee contract, and getting an approval straight away from the partners.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, so they do have a connector. There's a question of what it can do, what we should, from a security perspective, allow it to be able to do. But yeah, that seems like a great use case. We can just have a chat about it specifically and check what's out there.
The only one we need to be particularly careful of at the moment is the task force has been working with Blake and Hannah and Tanya, looking at how you can work with HR related data. So employee.
Oh, yeah.
Internal and external, and just, common sense would say it's all okay if you're just using Claude as you would Microsoft Word as a processing kind of tool. But we're just going through the checks there to make sure, given the heightened sensitivities.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So, but in general, if there's like tools so there's plenty of this type of task, which in the past you could automatize with platforms like Zapier or N8N, or other like automation things, or like even Microsoft workflows. What is particularly nice is this setup of you can use this chatbot effectively as a kind of like unified API organizer, where it would be previously it would have been like, oh, you have to connect yourself to the DocuSign API, to your email API, and build a small script to do the whole thing. And now you can just get the connectors in Claude, and it takes care of pulling data here, sending data there. So and creating this kind of automation is just super nice, and you can do so much more than we would be able to do technically before. So if there's any service like this where you'd like to be able to get that automation and connection, you can search online for the service name plus MCP, Model Context Protocol, or connectors, cloud connectors with the name of the service, and you see if there's something that seems to have some hit, like do they have some documentation about it? And if they do, you know there's something there, and then you can send us a message and we can look.
Okay.
But like, if you want to see if it's even like if there's something already that exists, because yeah, for example, for DocuSign they do have a connector, so that's like already partly done. So that's yeah, it's definitely possible. For stuff like Bloomberg, there's none, so you cannot. For example.
It makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense because they sell data. They want it very secure. Cool.
Cool. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Thank you. We'll call it there. See you next week. And again, thank you for patience as we've jumped between organizations, turn things on and off. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.